We've decided to make this podcast to share with our listeners some of our insights that we've gained from talking to different people in the field, and also to allow some of our clients and some of the people who we've encountered give their opinions about what they think are most important in drug discovery. Welcome. You're listening to Under the Surface, a podcast where we have in-depth discussions on computer-aided techniques in drug discovery. Today was our first in a series of podcasts called Under the Surface, where we're going to discuss computer-aided drug discovery. My name is Chris Williams. I've been working at CCG for 25 years now, and I've been a support scientist. So I've been seeing how pharma and biotech use our software. My co-host is Dave Thompson.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Dave, you're also an application scientist.
I am. I've been at CCG now coming up on 5 years. So I feel like there's some sort of promotion or raise conversation we have to have. Probably not on the podcast, but at some point, right?
Well, that's right. But you're going to become a senior.
No, I already am that.
Okay, so you become super senior. a senile.
Senile honestly, I think my LinkedIn followers look forward to seeing that. Wait, did he just write super senior application?
Super senior.
Is that a thing?
You've got magical powers now.
I knew there was a magical power thing that was unlocked at 5 years. I know we don't talk about it.
Your expense account for drinking becomes unlimited.
Well, I got some good news and some bad news. Well, what are we going to be talking about in Under the Surface? And thank you for reminding me the name of the podcast, because for a minute there, I blanked on it. I was like, couldn't remember.
Yeah. So I think in Under the Surface, we want to look under the surface about what's going on in computational chemistry.
It's very clever.
That's the why we called it that. And I think part of the reason is, as application scientists, we have a lot of experience with different user groups, different ways that software is used. And we would like to take this opportunity to sort of bring people together and discuss what works and what doesn't work in current computational drug discovery.
Is it going to be a gritty and realistic expose of the underbelly of computational chemistry?
Perhaps. Well, in some cases, we want to maybe take the gloves off a little bit. And sometimes we'll keep the gloves on. I mean, that's just the way things are. I mean, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of new technology coming out. It's a bit of a flurry. And even, I've been in the field for a while, but now there's lots of new stuff coming up with AI. There's a lot more biologics. Computers, of course, getting faster and stronger. And the question is, to what extent is this going to bear fruit that's maybe different from the fruit that we've been eating from computational chemistry for the last 25 years?
And honest to goodness, I am looking forward to trying to not be as cynical about this, because I feel like some of these things we've heard about for decades.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'm looking forward to hearing some hopeful stories of evolving technology and it being applied in successful ways. But I also do like perhaps to have the opportunity during this podcast to maybe ask some of those challenging questions about, well, why is it different this time round? Like, did we solve some of those problems, or is it just a shameless, retelling of some of those old stories?
That's actually very interesting. I saw an article in The Economist about, transformational technologies, and it seems there's more and more papers confirming things and less papers presenting paradigm shifts. So that's something to think about as well. When we look at what's new in computational chemistry, how is it different from what we did in the past?
Yeah.
Can we expect, better results? Why do we expect better results? What techniques do we use to get better results? And ultimately, is the impact on the overall drug discovery process bigger than it was historically?
Yeah, I think those are all interesting questions that I am excited to have a front seat in, both asking and listening to the answers to. So that's going to be very exciting. I would also like to ask questions of people regarding who the field is, right? What do we don't just, software that gets used to do a thing doesn't just live in a vacuum. It gets executed by people, and commercial software gets paid for. And if something is paid for, it means that there's sort of a trade-off that may have to be made if you're kind of spending resources in a company to pay for it. So the idea that, software is a sort of a socio-political thing, perhaps, maybe that sounds too grand, but the idea that there's sort of a sociology behind it, I find really interesting. So it'd be interesting to understand a little bit about that.
I think that's very true, and something to discuss, because a lot of, the old saying is, science progresses one funeral at a time. So, in the communities, what are the maybe because of the people in the communities, or just historically, why do we approach things certain ways? What is the community composed of in terms of personalities? How do those personalities accept change, right? And we see that sort of with big pharma versus small biotech. Big pharma they've discussed this idea of lack of innovation, or difficult to innovate as a community gets larger, and whereas a small community like a biotech can innovate, right? So as computational gets larger, to what extent does a large computational group or large amounts of precedence in computational methods stop you from innovating?
Yeah, there was I don't know where I read it over the weekend, but there was some article that said about how the folks who are being let go from all the tech companies are being snapped up by older companies who are hoping that these new hires will bring with them a new way of seeing how to do things, right? So it's sort of this trickle down innovation approach. I know that we have on the roster for our upcoming chats or conversations with folks in the field, we have a bunch of people from both big and small firms. So that feels like some interesting conversations we'll have with them regarding exactly this. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think especially with the small firms, it'll be interesting to see what new technologies they're bringing, because typically the small firms are based on applying existing technologies in a different way, or a brand new type of technology. Yeah. And also with big pharmas, that'll be a question of how much of these things can go into production. Maybe a certain technology works in one situation, but not others. So it might work for a small biotech on their one or a few target systems. A large pharma has, many different disease programs. So some technologies may work in one and not in another. So I think they'll have to give us a good overview of what works where.
Yep. Oftentimes these newer companies almost read more like technology companies than they do companies operating in the life sciences space. So that's going to be curious to explore a little bit with these folks who are generous enough to give us their time. So
yes.
The other thing I selfishly want to understand, or for us to explore perhaps over the coming episodes, is a little bit about CCG as a company. I've been here 5 years. Prior to that, I was a customer. I've always enjoyed my interactions with the people I either bought the software with, or the people that I'm lucky enough to call colleagues now. But CCG has been around, almost 30 years now?
Yes. I met Paul LeBute in 1994.
Yeah.
So it's been almost 30 years since I started consulting for them, and then started working full time in 98. Yeah. So I think they first conceived the company in early 93, and then finally brought the product to market in 97.
So do we think there will be some opportunity to get some of our colleagues on the record having a conversation? Like, such a curious thing. I just think it's such a fabulous story that I think it would be super.
I think so. We still have the most of the founders of the company still work at the company. And, we've seen lots of different changes in technology from silicon graphics machines and Sun workstations and, the different technologies that were popular at a certain time and then, fell out of favor. So, and also just the general approach of why we built the system. There's some technological as well as actually marketing background as to why we chose to make the operating system. It was based on some market surveys. So if we can talk about that, I think people find that. Oh yeah, we did market surveys on what people didn't like about their software, and we came up with, there was 3 points, and I'll save that for the episode. But we, based on that market survey, that's how we designed the most software.
Wow, I can't wait for that. It's going to be fabulous. Yeah. In 30 years, so much has happened, right? We've gone from I don't know, the early stages of using computers to support drug discovery, all the way through to what we just described, sort of drug computational first companies, which is just, it's going to be pretty exciting to understand more of that.
Yeah, I mean, so much has changed, right? Since I started, the number of crystal structures has grown incredibly. How much has that helped drug discovery overall? That's going to be interesting to sort of maybe suss out.
Yeah, the role of structural information, the absence of it, the in silico prediction of it, right? It'd be kind of cool,
especially with the new AlphaFold structures coming out. What's the impact of that? Yeah, it's a pretty exciting time. I think it'd be good. It's a good time to review what's been done, and with the new structural information plus the new push with artificial intelligence, it'll be quite interesting to see, what different people who actually work in the field, have to say about what works and what doesn't as we move forward.
Well, I'm excited.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Under the Surface. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an upcoming episode. If you have suggestions for future show topics, please email us at support@chemcomp.com. Until then, signing off.